Jumbo. Jumbo.
Hello, welcome to the podcast, everybody.
What's up?
So it's spring now, and
Yes.
I've been doing some spring cleaning.
Okay.
And it's mostly clothes because I've been so I work remotely, so I don't have to get dressed very much.
Right.
But I have a lot of clothes for that purpose. And so I've just been sort of steadily going through my closet and just wearing something each day and thereby deciding if it fits or not still.
Sure.
And most of it does not. And I think it's a combination of three things. So one, I'm just heavier, right? But that's not even a third of it. I think that's 15% of it, to be honest.
Okay. Sure.
Another 15% is I just don't want clothes that fit that way anymore, like that cut.
Sure.
Even this shirt is a little too small for me, but it's not hugging my midsection in a way that's just uncomfortable. But it's too small for my arms, and it doesn't fit. And part of it was, I think I just realized shirts are supposed to fit differently. And for a lot of years, because I have disproportionately broad shoulders for my arm length, I just sort of went based on arm length and not on shoulder. Anyway, so, but the other 70% of it, I really think is just the clothes having shrank so dramatically.
Yeah.
And
for sure.
I didn't realize, it's well, I've been washing my clothes the same way for years. Why do I just now feel like they're shrinking? And maybe it's because now they're tight and before they were just smaller. But I went through a whole Google deep dive of how do you stop that? And I learned some stuff. I learned that the fabric can just take a beating. It can be physically beat by other fabric in the washer to the point where it just goes, and
I'm done.
And it recoils. It's like a little nerd.
Right.
It's stop, please.
No.
I thought the answer would be simpler. You're using the wrong fabric, or just different dry cycle. And it was just nope, just put it on a gentle cycle and put it on a gentle dry, which doesn't dry anything. I don't know. Do you have this problem or do your clothes still fit you?
So I used to have this problem with shrinkage. It was our old dryer would do it. And so what I would do is dry it halfway and then let it air dry the rest of the way. And that would prevent it's not getting just baked in there.
Hey man,
close the door.
What if we got smaller?
What if they're not wearing us? What if we're wearing them, man? So there's that. But we changed over to a different washer dryer about a year and a half ago, and it is a combination washer and dryer. So it's one unit, and so you leave it in there, and it does both things. And it's really cool.
That's fancy.
Now, but it dries differently. So I don't know the science behind how it dries, but it does not do what all the other dryers do. It has a different drying mechanism. So the clothes never actually reach that super hot temperature that would cause them to shrivel. So I feel like I can dry them completely now and they don't shrink. But having said that, there is a lot to be said for, I think, as we have aged, what we want out of a shirt has changed.
Yeah.
And so I find myself going I've always liked this tight, kind of like form-fitting look.
Yeah.
And I still like that to a degree, but not as much. And part of it may be that I'm a little heavier, but part of it I think is I just don't care for that anymore. So I relate to all of the things you just said.
Yeah. Comfort.
Yeah. Comfort. Yeah. It's like, I don't want to have to like be tugging at my shirt because it's because I'm also a little more physical now than I was. And so as I'm like picking up my son, I don't want my shirt to like raise up too much and everyone see
your belly,
my torso.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, yeah. So like, I don't want that anymore.
Yeah.
Not that I was ever like, I want people to see my stomach. Yeah. I was just like, I didn't care.
Well, people see my abs when I pick up my kids.
Yeah. So now I'm just like, but yeah, I think that's totally it. Like our tastes do change.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, it's just pulling at your skin, or it's like pulling up over, like that would be the test. I'd go in my bathroom, I'd look and be like, okay, this looks a little tight. And then I'd like raise my arms up above my head, and it would do like the Act 1 Mr. Incredible thing with the belly button. And I was okay, this one's got to go. And
I've always had a thing with shirts. Like I cannot stand a stretched out collar. And so like 9 times out of 10, if I'm tossing a shirt or whatever, it's because the collar got stretched out. I just like, that bothers me so much to feel like it's all loosey goosey.
Yeah. It's just do whatever it wants.
Yeah. So there is that too. Like I've also tossed some shirts recently because they have some age on them. Like some of them are from, like I literally threw away shirts that I had senior year in high school.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that was a long time ago, dog. And you could see like holes in them.
Yeah.
And like, just like years of deodorant wearing had like faded the
dried
tits.
Aluminum. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm just like, this is way past time for this. So that's a thing for sure. But yeah.
And I always was just like, you know what? Like I could buy new shirts, like it's not a big deal. Like, why am I making such a big deal out of this? Like, there was a part of me that was like, I paid for the clothes. I'm going to get the mileage out of them. And that was my credo. Yeah. Just like every middle-aged white guy for like 15 years after you're in college, it's like, I'm not buying any more clothes. That's it.
Yeah.
My whole life centers around keeping the clothes I've already purchased. And it's just, I mean, I threw away shorts that I bought like 2 years ago because they shrank and like,
sure.
I was telling I feel like I was like trying to convince my daughter that I'm not like body shaming myself, but I was like, I said, they're fitting in a way that I can get them buttoned, but it's uncomfortable to sit. It's uncomfortable to stand.
Sure.
It all just, all of it. Like there's no plus. Why am I doing this to myself? And I think that's just the phase of my life I'm in, in many ways. It's like, why am I punishing myself? I can't live like this anymore. And I had to put my foot down, and I gave like 24 shirts and like 6 pairs of shorts, all my shorts. Actually, I went to Costco the same day and bought the only 2 pairs of shorts I now own.
Yep.
These like 30 size 38, like fishing shorts or whatever the shit, like, but they're loose and they're comfortable. And then they've got enough pockets, and
man,
I can wear them for like a week and you can't even tell.
Right. I've got, so I have a tote full of 42 shirts that I'm getting rid of. And,
wow.
And so it's like all of these like old shirts. Cause what I've found is like, it's funny saying this right now. I've found that I don't care for graphic tees anymore.
Yeah,
I'm
same.
Wearing one, but like I just don't care for them. So I think I mentioned this to you and maybe Kellen while we were at John's wedding, that like I just keep going to Target and buying these like $8 shirts.
The blank ones.
They're just like plain blank shirts.
This shirt came from
in
Target.
Like various colors. Yeah. And like they fit nice, and you can catch them on sale and like $6 a pop. Yeah. And so you just like cycle out. What I've done is like, this blue one, like, cause they're $6. So like the quality varies, like, or not the quality, but the sizing varies. So within your size, you might find one and like, oh, I really love this. And then you buy the exact same one in the same size and it doesn't fit quite. So it's not quite as consistent as you would hope. Golly. So like there's a few that I have that I'm like, I like these less. And so I have them in like the corner of the closet. And so like as they go on sale, I just cycle them out and I'm like, I'll try again.
Right.
And that kind of thing, which could probably all be solved if I just try them on there. I just don't. I'm just like, just get them, put them in the cart, keep walking.
Well, yeah, I don't care for graphic tees as much anymore, and I think part of it's not like an age thing because like I still have shirts that like it's fine, but like I bought like 4 shirts from Mobtown Merch that are all like Mobile signage. Like there's like a Fly Brooklyn one, and it's just like I feel it's like, well, at least it's the fucking place I live. It's not like someone gave me a Brooklyn shirt. And I love wearing it, but I feel like a fraud. I've never been to Brooklyn, what am I doing with this? And I would just walk around like the mall the last time I was there, like 20 years ago or whatever. And like, it was just, Hollister and everything else was always built up on like, it would say like, SoCal 97, or like those Gold's Gym. And it's like, I can't wear a Gold's Gym shirt. I've never been there. I'm not a member.
Right.
It's a lie.
Yes.
And I think I felt that way. And I was just like, okay, I'm only going to buy shirts now from places I've actually been. And it's a good rule of thumb. And I think another part of it was just because then it motivates you to travel. Now you don't travel just to buy a shirt, but Connor does. And, but like, I think another part of it, which is mirrored to our podcast in a way, is I just find myself so much less brand loyal enough to buy merchandise. And there's just such a freedom to just buying an $8 blank shirt from whatever big box store is carrying them. And then if something happens to it, it's fine.
Whatever.
Instead of like, oh no, I spilled red wine on my favorite Superman shirt.
Right.
Then it's like, and then before you know it, you're not, it's like when you buy a new pair of shoes and you don't want to do anything because you don't want them to get stained or you don't want them to get dirty. Yeah. And it's like, well, that just stops you from living life. Like it looks good, but correct. Like, for who, correct. To what end?
You slipped into a Hank Hill impression there.
To what end, Bobby?
That just stops you from living life.
Why? Living life.
Boomhauer. You got to live life with your shoes, man.
But what if I go outside and I get them all dirty? Bobby, damn it. Where are the shoes? I think that sounded like another Marge Simpson sister than it did Bobby.
Yeah, it sounded more like Selma than Bobby, but it's fine. Your Pamela Adlon needs some work.
I need to brush up on that. All right. Well, speaking of...
Hi, Dad. I can't do it either. I got the accent.
That's just 8-year-old you.
Yeah. Hi, Dad.
Hi, Dad.
Get off the lawn, Bobby.
I love you, Dad.
I've said for so long, like that show is too accurate to like everything.
This is the Saturday night episode. So Kellen was on here with us. And we talked about the new Jason Reitman film, Saturday Night, which is about the first episode, the first performance of Saturday Night Live, in 1975. And then I think we got a little bit into, the SNL as an institution, as a talent factory, and how best to continue the show these days. So, please enjoy Saturday Night. All right, so we're here to talk about Saturday Night, the film, which we have all seen, right?
Yes.
I'm second guessing myself these days because I keep thinking it was just one time of thinking Dustin saw a movie, and then I feel like this horrible like triggering shame every time I tee one up because I'm like, is it going to happen again?
Did you plan a whole episode and Dustin came on and you were like, all right, well, we're talking about this tonight.
I literally said, I was like, so Dustin, you saw this like a months ago, like way before I saw it. And you're like, I've actually never seen this film. And I was like, what?
Why are we talking about this? I was like, I don't know.
I was like, okay, well, I guess I'll just carry this one. And then it's like, whenever I do them by myself, they're like 8 minutes long. They're not very long. And so I was like, so it's this, and here's my brief thoughts. And then like toward the end of the episode, I keep just going, are you sure you haven't seen that? Like I just couldn't shake the feeling that he had. And
Mandela effect again.
I know it got me. All right, so Saturday night.
Look, my name is Lorne Michaels. I'm the producer of Saturday Night.
The whole night?
Yeah, the whole night.
Chevy Chase, Gilda Radner, Dan Iyek, how the fuck do you pronounce this?
Really?
You know, I was thinking, why don't we punt? We should run the dress rehearsal and claw back a win next Saturday.
We can't, Dick. It's a live show.
We're just not ready.
Doesn't matter that we're ready. It matters that it's 11:30. That's when we go on.
Lauren, all I'm trying to do is give you advice. It's in everyone's best interest, mainly yours.
Sorry, was that a threat?
Look around, Lorne. You haven't locked the script. Your crew is in open rebellion.
Fuck you! Fuck you! I definitely fuck you.
The writers on the 17th floor tied a belt around Big Bird's neck and hung him from my dressing room door.
So tell me how you fit into this ensemble.
Oh, is this an ensemble?
NBC makes more money playing runes of The Tonight Show.
NBC is lucky to have something as relevant as this show.
Lauren, they don't even want it.
That's logical, Dick. That's why they're paying us all to be here.
I mean, Lauren, 90 minutes of live television by a group of 20-year-olds who have never made anything. Do you ever stop and wonder why they said yes? A counterculture show starring total unknowns with zero narrative and even less structure.
What the fuck?
They want you to fail.
We just have to make it to air.
Am I still in the show?
Jesus Christ.
Sorry, tripped over my penis.
This is written and directed by Jason Reitman, co-written by Gil Keenan, starring a lot of people you probably haven't heard of. Gabriel LaBelle, Rachel Sennett, Corey Michael Smith, Ella Hunt, Dylan O'Brien, Emily Fame, Matt Wood, Lamorne Morris, Kim Matula, Finn Wolfhard, Nicholas Braun, Cooper Hoffman, Andrew Barth Feldman, Kaya Gerber, Tommy Dewey, Willem Dafoe, Matthew Reese, and J.K. Simmons. It's a big old cast. And it's because it's a film about the very first episode or the 90 minutes before the first taping and airing of the very first episode of Saturday Night Live in 1975. So there's been a big, like a whole lot of SNL stuff going on lately. Just the 50th anniversary and then the concerts and the mini docs and everything. So it's like, it's a big time for SNL. So yeah, like I said, so the movie takes place in like, kind of like in real time, basically. It's which is, I think, great. I mean, I think this is a great cast. I think it's full of really talented people who aren't simply doing impressions of their counterparts, but they're giving us fully lived in characters who have like a history that predates, us peeking in on them. I always like that when we have to sort of catch up and fill in the blanks and there's not time wasted on, oh my God, it's Chevy Chase. Hi, Lorne Michaels. We're getting a mere 90-minute glimpse into their lives and their insecurities and their goals and what they want out of this show. And the absolutely manic nature of what they're trying to pull off, especially at that time. Like, you think SNL's, nuts now, like it was even more nuts in the early days. So my main takeaway from it is I'm really impressed by the filmmaking because it's a lot of long tracking shots, through very elaborate sets with dozens of extras. And I always appreciate that. My favorite shows, two of them from the Palladinos, the Marvelous Mrs. Maisel and Gilmore Girls, both do that. There's a whole lot of like a lot of production and theater-esque blocking and movement to it. And I always appreciate that on film as more than just shot, reverse shot, and, you know, having the editing save the movie, which it can make for a good film, and it can sort of just generic down what could have been a better shot film. So I think if you're a fan of SNL, you should see the movie. I think if you're not, you might be a tad lost on the significance of what they're doing, because the film is full of many small nods to the show. But as we say on this show, no member berries, though. Nothing that's like blatantly like, at least not to me.
other than like recognizing a couple sketches or something like that, like
which is part of the story
going to happen.
Yeah. So that's my take on Saturday Night. I mean, not like blown me away, amazing. Just like, hey, that was a really well done film. You know. I don't know, Dustin. What about you?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a well shot film. It's a well written film. The characters, like you said, are fully realized, and the actors do a really great job at bringing them to life. But I want to call out the casting of this, like not just the performances, but the casting is so spot on that these actors are able to not just live as these characters and talk as these characters, but they also kind of look like these people.
Yeah.
To the, like, not so much that you're like distracted, but enough that you buy into the immersion of it.
Yeah.
And like, we've seen what biopics are like when the actors don't resemble, and sometimes it works and sometimes it really breaks it, especially when you're really familiar with the people. But like in this, like, for instance, what's his name? Matt Wood as John Belushi, like instantly recognizable as John Belushi, though he doesn't actually look like John Belushi, but he does.
Yeah.
It's the weirdest thing. And it's such great casting, same with like Dylan O'Brien and Corey Michael Smith as Dan Aykroyd and Chevy Chase. Like, they're believable as those characters, and it's like a squint and you would buy it as being the actual person. But yeah, I really enjoyed, the casting of this, and beyond that, there's a few like notable bigger names, right? Like J.K. Simmons or Brad Garrett that, like, even though Brad Garrett doesn't really do anything, but like J.K. Simmons is a really good addition to it. He brings a different energy. He's like this, he's Milton Berle. So he's this old seasoned, star, and he's up against these young hotshot, untested folks. And like, it's such a good contrast, but I think what I enjoy most about it is it'd be very easy in a story like this, where it's very ensemble based and it's very, like you said, it's in real time. It would be very easy to just get lost in what the mechanics of the plot are and lose character. But I actually really felt for Lorne Michaels during this because, and maybe that's because, like, I've produced, not to this level, but I've produced live events, and I understand the craziness that is, and having to have your hand in everything and people with questions for you constantly. I get that. And like, I can relate to that. And then the moment when it feels like it's going to work is a really cathartic and affecting moment. 'Cause you're like, wow, like they're pulling this off. It's such a, like, for me, I almost, not quite, but I almost got choked up just at the, like, wow, everyone said it wasn't going to work. And they really, because it's in real time, you really feel like at any moment it could be pulled right out from under him. Now, I mean, of course we know how history actually unfolded, but that aside, you do believe that at any moment it could end. And Willem Dafoe plays the antagonist in the film to great effect. I mean, he's always great, but he's great here. He's manipulative, conniving, and that character with Lorne, it's a really cool dichotomy between those two characters. Their worldview is drastically different. Their view of the art, their view of what's going to make air and what's not is drastically different. And so they're diametrically opposed from each other. And that just makes for a good, it's a good foil. And I don't know enough about the story in real life. Like, did this character exist? Did he really come down that day? And did he really, threaten to pull the rug out from under everything at the last minute? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. But it works in the context of this. And whether it's literal or not, he's the personification of, the brass at NBC that could at any moment stop Lorne's dreams from coming true. Yeah. And so when spoiler alert, when it does happen, it feels very emotionally fulfilling. Like they beat the odds and these underdogs won. And so I really enjoyed the ride of it for all of those reasons. And I was just really surprised that Lorne ended up being the protagonist. I don't know. I didn't know anything about the movie. So I just kind of thought like there's always been this weird mystery around Lorne Michaels for me. And I've always felt like he's just kind of like sits back and lets the artist do the thing. And he just does, okay, cool, whatever. But seeing that character drive the story was, I don't know, unexpected for me. And I thought it was going to be way more about Chevy Chase than anything else. And so I enjoyed the ride. And I do recommend it. I'm not a huge SNL super fan, and I don't know much about the first episode, but I recognize things, and that's cool. But for me, it was just cool to go along for the ride. So I'd say if you don't know anything about SNL, I think you can still enjoy this.
Just in continuation with both of your praises of the cast, for sure. I had never heard of Gabriel LaBelle or whatever before this. I don't think I'd ever even seen him in anything. So for all intents and purposes, for me, this was like introducing, this guy for the first time. And I just thought, Dustin, I don't know a ton about Lorne Michaels, but like however he depicted the character was just like really earnestly, it felt like a really good anchor for the film. And I don't know, it seems like approaching a film that is within these bounds of like a real time sort of thing with a very, very large ensemble cast, half of whom are playing like really iconic American culture icons and stuff, like seems fraught with, potential disaster here and there. I believe I made reference to this film, like enjoying it and stuff and saying how it spoke really interesting to Jason Reitman's like career, that he's, doing Ghostbusters movies that are bombastic and kind of what I find to be kind of problematic with Hollywood and, IP resuscitation and injecting too much cash and visual effects into something that didn't need it. And, what happened to the 100 million and less budget movies and yada, yada. But if I think I said in that episode, like if he's able to do that to afford to be able to be given these kinds of projects or passions of his or something, then like maybe that's a necessary evil, because I really did enjoy this movie enough to be fine with the existence of two Ghostbusters movies that didn't need to be made. I really love the cast. I know a bit more about like early SNL, not to the point where I recognized every sketch that was shown, like, being rehearsed for this film or anything like that. But the household I grew up in, like my parents were kind of like, I got to college and we made reference humor kind of just like our language together, like films and stuff. But it really came from my parents making references to SNL sketches and stuff like that. Like Gilda Radner's what is it, like Violins on Television? I don't know if you know that one.
I don't.
She had she wasn't the church lady. It was some sort of character where she was confused and wondered why people were upset about violins on television instead of violence on television. And she's like, I think there should be more violins on television. Anyway, so like that and like Wild and Crazy Guys, like my parents just made references to it. And so like maybe I would see the sketches and maybe I wouldn't, but it would basically just be burned into my skull. So a lot of this stuff with Aykroyd and Chevy Chase is like my parents' favorite. It's really funny to like know now that he's a crotchety asshole. But I guess Corey Michael Smith, I've got the cast list up right here.
Yeah.
Like his depiction of Chevy Chase was great. His introduction, I think Connor, you were saying was just really succinct because like they didn't set it up to be like, and here's Chevy Chase and he's gonna do. He literally like trips and goes, oh, I like. What did he say? Like tripped on my big dick or something?
He falls over a trash can and said, "Sorry about that. Tripped on my penis."
Tripped on my penis, and then you go, yeah, that's Chevy Chase.
Yeah.
Like,
That's Chevy Chase. Yeah. Feels like Pierce Hawthorne just for some reason to me. Yeah.
Pierce Hawthorne if he was like confident and an asshole.
Yeah, right.
Or a confident asshole. And then just like I just think the gamble that you take is it could all fall apart at any moment to have like a film like this, kind of the same way like a live show that Lorne Michaels is trying to put on could fall apart at any second. But I think the juice was worth the squeeze because essentially it's like there's no fat in the film. You basically are just entertained by, moment and set piece after set piece. And it's almost like SNL itself or something. So like, it was just really interesting to watch it. And in an era where I'm really, really aware of how long a film is going by. Granted, I think this is only a 90-minute film.
Yeah.
It was just really nice to finish a movie and go, man, I actually wish that was a little bit longer. Like I haven't felt that in so long. And I remember leaving the film thinking that. Couple other standouts. Cooper Hoffman. He played kind of like Lorne's sort of like patron saint at the network or something that was basically like trying to help him out. He has a very minor role, but
Dick
like,
Ebersol.
I wish I would see him in more things. Like I liked him in Licorice Pizza. Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
And I don't know. He reminds me of like a young American Jared Harris or something. I don't know how to describe him.
Oh, okay.
Interesting.
Let's see. Nicholas Braun did double duty as Andy Kaufman and Jim Henson. And
that's crazy.
Those performances were fucking amazing.
Very understated.
Yep. I know.
Yep.
And just like seeing the cast use like Big Bird as like as like the butt of a joke.
Yeah.
J.K. Simmons was great. Willem Dafoe was great. Willem Dafoe is just like in everything now. And usually that starts making me dislike somebody.
Yeah.
But like, I think Willem Dafoe should just be in everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Anyway.
I love that J.K. Simmons is in the film too. Like, because he's like a Jason Reitman, like, like
mainstay.
Yeah, mainstay. But he's actually really good casting as Milton Berle. Like he could have just been like Willem Dafoe, like the suit. But the fact that they got him to look enough like Milton Berle, and I was gonna say there is some fat in the film, Kellen.
His big old penis.
His wiener. That's what I was trying not to say earlier, and here I am now.
Well, you either have to cut that from the episode or put a spoiler alert thing, because I think that's the only really spoiler you can have in a film like this, is that J.K. Simmons pulls his penis out. And really good depiction of disgusting 70s era
workplace mentality.
Yeah, and sexual harassment,
workplace
and,
flashing,
toxic masculinity, all that.
Yeah.
I remember like watching that part and being like,
wow,
this is really fucking uncomfortable.
I know.
Yep.
Like everybody that was in this did like a really fantastic job.
Yeah. I really do think that that Dylan O'Brien, I thought he was such a perfect Dan Aykroyd.
Yeah,
he's growing on me. Like in his career, like I remember when he was doing, was he Percy Jackson or some shit?
It was some YA thing.
He did
Maze Runner or something.
I don't know, but like he's pulling like a Robert Pattinson on me, like where I actually am starting to really enjoy his career trajectory. Like, did you guys see Love and Monsters or something like that?
No, but I heard it was great.
It was fun. Like,
okay,
I had a lot of fun with that movie.
I'll watch it.
It's kind of like one of those movies where there's not a lot of like narrated films these days, and that kind of always runs the little bit of a risk. But like it's meant to be like a saccharine, cheesy kind of like love story, but set in post-apocalypse. So anyway, I thought he was great as Dan Aykroyd.
Yeah.
Well, it's not just his performance, but the the dialogue was so spot on, Dan Aykroyd. And I don't know anything about like Dan Aykroyd other than his films. Like I don't know much about his persona except for that now he's a really eccentric, paranormal dude.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I can see that here in this performance. And I don't know if they're writing to what his current persona is or if he's always been that way. But either way, I immediately was like, oh, that's Dan Aykroyd, right? Like just in the dialogue only.
Yeah, I think he had the, Connor, you were mentioning, or maybe it was you, Dustin, who was saying like, the guy that they cast for Belushi, like didn't entirely look like him, but like you really felt it. And I feel like Dylan O'Brien really doesn't look at all like young Dan Aykroyd, but that means he had his work cut out for him to kind of evoke him. And I think he really did very well. And so without looking like him, that's pretty impressive.
They're just like, he's got a mustache. It's close enough.
Well, I don't know. I mean, a lot of it too was just their physicality too. And the voices went a long way. Like Ella Hunt, who plays Gilda Radner, doesn't look like Gilda Radner at all, but she nailed the way she sounded and the way that she kind of moved, like her sort of more genteel, kind of innocent approach to comedy. And who was it that played Jane Curtin? Kim Matula. Doesn't really look like Jane Curtin to me, but she nailed like the spirit of her,
She kind of does. I don't know. I see it.
And Lamorne Morris too
does not look like him.
No, doesn't look like Garrett Morris, but he sounded just like him, and he got the mannerisms, especially the way that guy talked. Like I am being underutilized, just the way his
What's funny is, and you were saying it was a relatively unknown cast, as far as like the main players and stuff. Lamorne Morris, like we don't often talk about it because I don't think we have a huge overlap with this show.
For New Girl,
I love New Girl. Like, I fully admit that it is a slow burn show, but like I go back and rewatch that show probably twice a year, while I'm doing work and having it on in the background and stuff. But Lamorne Morris on that show is fucking-tastic. Like his character is one of my favorite sitcom characters ever. Winston on New Girl. And so I wanted to see this movie purely because of him. So if there was one disappointment, it would literally be that Garrett Morris was underutilized in the film itself. So maybe there's some meta there, but like,
which is,
if I had one complaint, it's like, there's really not a lot of Lamorne Morris. And I think this was like right off the hot off the heels of his season 5 Fargo, right?
Yes.
So there was buzz around him, and I think he actually won like an award. Not a Jesus? This is how not
what awards. Emmy?
Yeah, he won an Emmy for that, I believe. It's fun to see a really chaotic but tight knit film like this that just seems like a huge logistical challenge come out like really pleasant and good, and I don't really have many complaints about it whatsoever.
I also want to shout out Nicholas Podany, the one who played Billy Crystal. That was good. Let's see. There's a couple others I wanted to point out specifically. I really love seeing John Batiste in here, who is the composer of this film, by the way. But he's in here as Billy Preston. I liked the guy, Brian Welch, who played Don Pardo, sounded just like him. Who's another one? Oh, Matthew Reese as George Carlin. That was great casting. I thought too.
Voice down for sure.
He had Again, didn't really look like him. And they used George Carlin's actual album cover. Did you notice this?
But replaced it with
I think it was George Carlin.
Okay.
I thought he looked, I mean, he certainly, the hair and makeup, certainly he looks a lot like him, but I thought that he resembled him a whole lot. I think I've actually watched the first episode of SNL and seen like his actual like monologue and stuff. So like the shirt and just the way I thought he was really, I love Matthew Reese. He's great on The Americans. That's a good show. That's just, I guess that's what we got to say about Saturday Night. Can I take us in a possibly cutting out department here? I want to just briefly talk about Milton Berle's penis. So the fact,
do you have a name for it, like LBJ?
No,
LBJ called his jumbo.
I don't think he ever confirmed it, but in his autobiography, Berle tells of a man who accosted him in a steam bath and challenged him to compare sizes, leading a bystander to remark, "Go ahead, Milton. Just take out enough to win."
Jesus. Maybe here, I'll start up a conversation that means you won't cut what we just talked about.
Fuck. All right,
because
I was going to.
Like, one thing that I wanted to bring that kind of back in was that scene was actually kind of pivotal about like the change of guard in television and like the youths coming up on TV and stuff like that. So, which kind of leads me to a reaction to the film that I forgot when I was actually doing my little spiel earlier. Is this is the first time like I feel like just inherently in our mid 30s as moviegoers, we're gonna now start feeling old when we see certain talent and stuff like that. This was the first movie where I was watching something that was historic, that usually just that era makes me feel young because I wasn't alive then. But it was really interesting to watch this cast and have them make me feel old. Like I watched this and I was like, these are just fucking kids trying to run a TV show. Yeah. And like, that's kind of the point of the film. And as a 35-year-old, I don't often feel old still. Like, maybe I'll have back problems when I go to bed one night or some shit. But like, I generally feel like a youthful person. Yeah. And watching this movie in cast and circumstances and stuff did make me feel old. And specifically Milton Berle's penis being pulled out is supposed to be it's basically the thing that like...
Did that make you feel young?
Drops the real consequences on you as the viewer and the characters as players in network television.
Thank you for not responding to that.
I agree with you. That's one of the things that makes me feel oldest is when I see young people through history that have accomplished a great deal while young.
Yeah.
And
younger than you are. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm like, oh, how old were the Beatles? Oh, ouch. Ouch.
Lorne Michaels was like 30 when he produced this, and the dude playing him was 22.
Yeah.
Yo.
It's crazy.
That is. Yeah, and it's just crazy. But in a weird way also, I did find myself identifying with the youngins and saying like, yeah, like these are young guys and, they're just trying to, do their art and, it's different. It's new. It's, not that stale old whatever that Milton Berle and the likes used to flaunt. Like there's that moment in the film where Lorne goes to Milton Berle's show and they're rehearsing or filming some like stuffy little dance number with the girls dancing around Milton. And he's just kind of like smiling and you see the producer dead inside. And there's this moment, like that comes back later where Lorne is wondering if that's going to be him, and it's that sort of thing. But at the same time, it just shows that like this old way, it had grown stale and it needed some kind of youthful energy to, bring it back to life. And we even have a moment where Johnny Carson calls Lorne and he's not very kind. He's not like accepting of these young hotshots. And it's like, okay, so like everybody's kind of a jerk in old Hollywood. And here's these young guys just trying to do something cool and fun and like have fun while they do it. And I find myself like rooting for that just for the sake of like, oh, this is young and new and cool, and edgy and whatever else, irreverent. So I did, it was a weird thing because I did feel both, I'm one of you, and at the same time like, oh, I'm way older than you and I've accomplished way less. Cool. But it's that sort of thing that always gets me. But I don't know. I mean, I guess that just shows like how much Gabriel LaBelle carried this film. That he did make you root for him and he did make me feel for him and like I was him in a way. And
Dustin, what just struck me about your description of his performance, I mean, he's definitely the straight man in as far as structure goes, but like that can be such a boring position. And what I just realized is he really reminded me of like Jason Bateman as Michael Bluth.
Michael Bluth. Sure. Yeah, totally.
Which is like a guy that under any other circumstances would have cartoonish like qualities himself. But beside all of these kind of further wider wackos, he is the absolute like baseline that you as a viewer feel kind of like, not only are you seeing it from his perspective, but you're actually seeing it through his eyes in terms of how he interprets everything.
Yeah, and it gives him a layer. It gives him this layer of like, okay, you probably are more of a comedic personality than the film gives you credit for. Mm-hmm. And Lorne, is probably more comedic than history gives him credit for. But the truth is, when you're doing the job that he's doing, you have to put some of that away and like lock away the funny so that something can get done. And sort of the case in point in this is Lorne was originally going to host Weekend Update. And it wasn't working. But like, I'd imagine Lorne gave himself that position because he is funny and wants to be funny and has that desire to entertain, but he's better suited in a different role. And so, yeah, I think he's just as wacky as everyone else, except right now he can't afford himself that opportunity.
Yeah, they need him in the production role more.
Exactly. So yeah, and that's an interesting layer because yeah, you can read it that way or you can read it whatever way, but regardless, Lorne has to be straight in this. Yep. He can't be anything else. And you can put him next to everyone else and let them be whatever, but yeah, he has to be straight.
I don't necessarily know enough about pre-70s comedy and stuff like that, but like it does feel like SNL like nothing had served its role up until that point. You had a lot of like musicians with like their hours and their ensemble shows and even sketch comedy and stuff like that, but I feel like if we're talking more widely like SNL 50 and all that stuff that's been going down, like also my girlfriend is into comedy and has like taken classes with UCB and stuff. And it's like one of the things that it's almost like the same reason why I still won't give Simpsons grief, even though I haven't really watched it for like 15 years or more. Like I don't spend a lot of time watching SNL content because I feel like one, it's easier to find your specific kind of form of comedy now, and you don't need to watch broadcast television for it. And it does, but mostly like what else SNL's importance to me now is that like they're kind of curators of comedy talent. They don't find people before they're big and then make them big. They kind of like pull people in, while they're on the rise sort of thing. And I think that's kind of been the most important lasting impact that they've had. Like we have success stories for people that like failed on SNL because they couldn't make it in like the more kind of wider audience, more palatable kind of thing. Like Tim Robinson was an SNL.
Julia Louis-Dreyfus was never huge on SNL.
SNL failures and stuff are just as important because I think it's like a very, I don't know. It's like a American Ninja Warrior for comedians, but like when you lose, it just means you go find your niche audience elsewhere. Cause like elsewhere, I think you should leave is huge, but like not a lot of people like it because most people find it annoying. And I'm one of the people that really enjoys it. And like half of my friends hate it. And so I don't know. SNL is important, even if I don't necessarily watch it much.
Yeah, I agree. And I view it as a turning point in broadcast comedy. And I always liken it to, and there is professional overlap here, but Conan O'Brien. Like we were too young to feel like we weren't born yet when SNL really, really lit the fire. And so we didn't feel that. And we were a little bit too young to feel Conan do the same thing. But then when Conan took over The Tonight Show, there was this weird thing where Conan was ours in a weird way. Like by that time, like you know, sure, everyone loves Dave Letterman and everyone loves, you know, whoever else, but like Conan's always been the guy for me, right? You know what I mean? Like he's always been
everybody had
comedian.
their late night guy.
Yeah, and I always feel like Conan and his sensibility is the most early Saturday Night Live thing we have, and it's also like what I imagine, like the nostalgia I have for Conan, and will always have the soft spot for Conan that I do, is what most people have, like our parents would have for Saturday Night Live, because they saw that huge shift live when it happened. And so, yeah, I don't have that historical framework, but I do have the framework of, you know, what Conan did for comedy, and then said, oh, okay, great. Like this is what I imagine this to be. Cause you look at those old, like when Conan did the Late Show, it was, you know, sketch comedy, just like Saturday Night Live. And like Amy Poehler got her start on Conan. This is pre SNL. And so like he was fostering talent.
Was it pre UCB?
No, I think it was post UCB, but it was, or during or something. I mean, it was like, she was just like a featured player every once in a while. And there's that guy that was like always with Conan. I don't know his name, but like he's always there.
Andy Richter? What are you talking about?
No, not Andy. Do you remember that blooper where he's like, Conan, God? It's like that guy, whoever that guy is. He's like, that's always like one of Conan's like big, you know, collaborators or whatever. And, but like he and Amy Poehler were like early, you know, whatever. And anyway, so I always feel like Conan was, I don't know, the closest thing that our generation had to like this big comedy linchpin that changed everything. But like, because you could point to Seinfeld or, you know, like anything Larry David, you know, like whatever, but it doesn't feel as irreverent or zany as Saturday Night Live did. So it's not a 1-to-1, but it's, I mean, like Seinfeld and Larry David certainly changed comedy, but not in that same zany way.
It feels like it just a widening allowance for irreverence and, you know, fewer sacred cows kind of thing. Not as far as like you can offend anybody. It's like, it's more along the lines of like play with more things as far as your humor.
Yes. And like one of the things that I enjoyed is like, okay, well, we'll include Jim Henson in this, but like Jim's comedy and, you know, Chevy Chase's comedy are two very different comedies. But somehow, like, because Saturday Night Live was zany and because it was irreverent and because it was, you know, completely kind of unfiltered, it could do both. It could invite people to the field that would play clean or cleaner, and then people who would, you know, get right up on the edge. And I don't know. I think that's interesting. It's an interesting thing that Saturday Night Live did, and they're still doing it. Like, I still think that's the case.
I have thoughts on the still doing it stuff too.
Okay.
When we get there.
My last thought is you can't cancel SNL because then I think Kenan Thompson would just drop dead. Like, I think the show is keeping him alive and young.
Yes. Agreed.
I want to talk about this.
I have something to say about this.
We got hot takes.
Well, hold on. Let me go.
We got Keenan hot takes.
Let me take a break. Let me put my son to bed real quick, and then
let me go take a hot take in the toilet. I'm just kidding.
All right, I'll be right back. Okay, so yeah, let's talk about the show now, because I also watched the Beyond Saturday Night docuseries on Peacock. You know, we recently, Dustin, I think we talked about the 50th anniversary special, maybe briefly. Yep. Before that, I watched, I started watching this. I recently finished it, but it's a 4-episode series about the history of the show. A lot of celebrity interviews, well-known current cast members, former cast members. My favorite episode was the one that just focuses on the writers. I feel like they're obviously like overlooked a lot in sketch comedy. And I had thoughts though while I was watching this, because, you know, obviously like it's a grind writing for SNL. but they, it's real. I mean, you get like one day off, you know what I mean? Like you're writing Monday through Saturday, and it's, I don't know when they come in. I think it's sometime in the afternoon, but I mean, like you work late and a lot of revisions and just a whole lot of, apparently like Tuesday is like the hardest day, because that's when they're there the latest. Yeah. And so I kept thinking about how, and like they're all talking about it, the cast certainly, but the writers especially, they're all they have this like beleaguered, tired look to them, but they're all just like, yeah. And then we do it all over again. And it's just like, sometimes I want to be like, are you blinking Morse code that you need rescue
help?
Like, yeah, I've seen and heard this rationalization before. It's like, oh, it's just the way it is. And, and just the alarm bells in my head go off like, oh, but that sucks though. And does that necessarily make for the best product? And that's what I started thinking about, is like, well, the show has long been in like a writing lurch kind of, or like a concept lurch. Like jokes are funny, but premises aren't always funny. And I was like,
I've only really tend to find the pre-recorded kind of
that's what
stuff to be of any quality. Yeah,
that's what I tell Dustin. It's like, that's just because, editing and, multiple takes and,
you can craft it.
Yeah. So I kept thinking like there should be a way. What would I do if I wanted to change how the show was written? Because, you obviously don't change it. You don't change the frequency of the broadcast. But I felt like you would have, I just wanted to run this by you guys because it really does speak to like, would this just be better? All I could think about while I was watching this was, okay, there has to be a way to do this better. Because first you appreciate writers, then you're like, oh, Jesus, that's horrible though. So I would have 3 teams of writers. Okay. I would have team 1, team 2, team 3. And then every week, two teams are working and a third team is off, and you rotate. So week 1, 1 and 2 are writing. Week 2, 2 and 3 are writing. Week 3, 3 and 1 are writing, and so on. It's a rolling schedule of 2 at a time, 1 off, because they're clearly burnt out. And I think it's just too short of a window for that to be effective. And this is NBC. They can hire more writers and pay writers better. And this way, every writer gets to work 2 on, 1 off. They get a break to sleep, see their families, and live their lives. And maybe they still obviously get paid this salary because they're expected to come back the next 2 weeks with, fresh ideas, a certain number of sketch ideas maybe. But how can you expect them to have fresh ideas when they have 0 work-life balance and no time to absorb new ideas that may provide them with creative inspiration? Most of the time you're coming up with, like, after a while, you don't just come up with things just, I know that there's like, wisdom to just sit in the room and come up with the idea, but it's like, but a self-enforced deadline like that for comedy, like I get it. We got to do the show every week, have teams of writers and do it that way because they are burnt out. There needs to be more of them in a room because the small group they have is not enough. And it's not enough just to double the team. You need to cycle the team. I don't know. That's my take.
I agree with you. I think that there should be some sort of a cycling. I think it opens up a lot of other logistical questions because from what I understand, the host doesn't normally arrive until week of, which then
they're there on Monday for that first meeting.
Which if the writers have already been working for a week, then sure, they've got a bunch of ideas, but they're still like bound to whatever the host dictates because the host is going to be the driving force. We got to get to know you, hear your voice. We got to see what ideas you're bringing to the table, figure out what your strengths and weaknesses are. And only so much of that can be done prior to the host being there. But what that would mean is, okay, well then the host just arrives a week in advance. So we get a full week of writing with the host without the pressure of the show looming and without that host being pulled away to rehearsal after rehearsal. So I do think that there's still value in it, but I think that it's more than just giving the writers extra time. It's then also giving actors time, giving the host time. And I think unless they have two teams of performers, it's going to be really tough to have them in the room. And some of them are in the room. But I agree with you that like the deficit of Saturday Night Live is, especially recently, but maybe always, is the writing. Yeah. The writing, when it's strong, it's super strong. But a lot of times those are characters that have been tossed around for like a decade at, UCB or wherever at the Groundlings. Like they've been workshopping this character for 18 years. Yeah. And now I have the opportunity to bring it up. And, it's what Bob Odenkirk, when he wrote the motivational speaker for Chris Farley, it was like, that's something that happened long before Saturday Night Live.
Second City. Yeah.
Yeah. It was all Second City stuff. And so it was, it had been workshopped, right? So you do lose the opportunity to workshop your material when it's like, okay, we have to write it in a day and have a script locked the next day. That's really tough. But I 100% agree with you. I mean, that is the deficit of the show.
Part of me thinks the reason why SNL is still around is because it operates the way it is. And because it operates the way it does, there can be no competitors because it is a crazy like wood chipper of a thing. Yeah. But that's because, and I don't think it's disrespectful to say it, but like it's because it's a springboard for careers on the writing side and on the performing side. So like it's one of those things where it's like it's a wood chipper that you willingly throw yourself into because odds are that you're going to come out the other end. Well, not a pile of wood chips, but metaphor fell apart.
Hopefully.
Things don't come out of a wood chipper in a good state. But like, it makes careers and stuff. Like there's people.
A blender, you get a yummy milkshake at the end.
Sure. Yeah. Not like a Fargo nightmare escape.
Yeah. Oof. But that's a bad milkshake.
Like it is such a mill for comedy cultural zeitgeist members. Like Ted Lasso came out of a Jason Sudeikis, which came from SNL, and like there's so many success stories on that level, and I think that's kind of why people are willing to put up with it. And I think the only reason it even can exist is because of that, the way it operates.
Yeah,
I also think that like that's and this kind of goes into the next subject here about this Vanity Fair article. Somebody interviewed Kenan Thompson about Lorne, the prospect of Lorne retiring. And it makes me think of it because I think this made me sort of feel like the budget is maybe another reason. Like, it's not overly expensive to make SNL, I guess. And it's like no competition, too rigorous, not a bloated budget. It's an institution. And so it's not like an inconvenience for NBC to not have it. But he was on some podcast, Kenan was on some podcast, and he said that it may not be a bad idea to cap the show off at its 50th season. He said that Lorne doesn't want to do it after age 80. This was written in 2022, but the points, so some of this is, aged out, but he said there could be a lot of validity to that rumor because 50 is a good number to stop at. It's an incredible package. He will be probably close to 80 years old at that point, which he is now. He's the one who's had this touch the whole thing. I think I'm committed to doing the show until its 50th anniversary, which is in 3 years. I'd like to see that through, and I have a feeling that would be a really good time to leave. Kenan went on to say that it also might make sense financially for the network to end the show after Michael's retirement. He says if somebody tries to come into his shoes, it's a good opportunity for NBC to save money as well, and they may slash the budget. And at that point, you can't really do the same kind of show. So that's unfair to watch it just really go down in flames. because of those restrictions, capping it at 50 may not be a bad idea. I have thought about that recently. Like, okay, what if Lorne did retire? How would they keep doing the show? Would they keep doing the show? Does he want to retire? What would he want to do? And the only thing I've ever heard floated that would make sense to me is Lorne retires and Tina Fey becomes the executive producer of SNL and it keeps going. And hopefully her, whatever leadership would usher in kind of a fresh, age for it.
She just changed the name to The Girly Show with Tracy Jordan. That was a 30 Rock reference. Sorry.
No, I know.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, so I agree with you. Like Tina Fey would be a great pick.
Yeah.
I've heard a rumor lately that Lorne is actually putting forth Kenan for that role. That he wants. I don't know what the actual, because like the word grooming has changed as my wife has let me know, but he's been grooming Kenan to take that is the rumor.
Yeah.
And that Kenan would become executive producer. Now, Kenan's been around sketch comedy since he was a child.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Transitioning him out of being a performer makes sense. His desire to maybe want to do something different makes sense. Whoever comes into that role, if it is somebody like a Faye or Kenan, you can rest assured that Lorne would continue operating through their ear for a time. So I would think that if they could talk to the studio and say, look, we're promoting from within. There's no change happening here. Lorne is still going to be heavily involved as a consultant, but Kenan or Tina is the new go-to for this show. I don't think the budget would get slashed, and I don't think there would be a change. I think it could stay the same. It would just be, a new era of what it was. Now, if they decided to really break ties, then yeah, I think the studio would look at how can we save money. But I think NBC understands the significance of the show. Like Kellen was mentioning, in grabbing rising talent and catapulting them into stardom, because you have to remember, Lorne doesn't just produce this show. He also produces The Tonight Show. He produces a bunch of other things, and he produces film.
Yeah, I was about to say films is probably a bigger component of this as far as the revenue stream for SNL's wider umbrella.
Exactly. So, all of these stars, look at like Wayne's World, look at, like any number of these films that they've been springboarded from Saturday Night Live into a larger, cinematic context. Like that's something that's incredibly valuable. And you could argue that without Saturday Night Live, we wouldn't have anything from Will Ferrell. We wouldn't have anything from Tina Fey or Amy Poehler or, like all of these big names that we now know, like these are movie stars or TV stars, however you want to,
Pretty sure we wouldn't have Tommy Boy even.
We wouldn't have Tommy Boy.
And I don't want to live on that timeline.
I know, right? Without Tommy Boy. It's a strange thing, but like, Saturday Night Live is too important. Even if the show is no longer important, what it does is important. And I think that NBC, if they're smart, they recognize that, and they're going to want to keep it as intact as possible. And especially if Lorne can say, I'm still a consultant, but I'm naming my successor. Yeah. You're not naming them. You're not going to pull some random person. It's going to be me making that decision. And I think if anybody has that power, it's him. And then that person would take over the empire. It wouldn't be just Saturday Night Live. It would be everything that Lorne touches. And yeah, I mean, I don't know who I would pick apart from someone like a Tina Fey or, I mean, I don't know, maybe a Bill Hader, but it would really have to be somebody that's sold out to sketch comedy. And I think Tina is like, as great as she is and as great as she would be in that role, I don't think she needs it. I think Keenan needs it a little bit.
Yeah. Ooh, I mean, imagine like being on that show and working that schedule for 20 years. And then, it comes up like, hey, not only am I going to stay on SNL, I'm going to run it now. And so I'm going to at least probably spend the next 20 years running this show.
Yeah.
I'm just going to work this schedule. I keep coming back to like that schedule. It's just like, that's so relentless, and it sounds horrible. I mean, I know you get summers off and like Christmas and stuff, but like, that's difficult.
It's a boot camp, man. It's, Well,
just imagine spending, Dustin, we all have, at some point, like spending that much time away from home, even with, as well paid as I'm sure they are, or at least adequately for New York City, like that's still like after a while, I feel like it's hard to be funny if you're just, if that's just your entire life,
Well, and you have to think about like how much of Saturday Night Live is pulled from pop culture. But if you don't have time to consume pop culture,
that's what I'm saying.
How can you make a clever take on it?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it would be the equivalent of like, okay, we're in the writer's room. We're going to do Severance. We're going to do a thing on Severance. Yeah. Okay, cool.
What's
it
this?
about? I don't know. No one's seen it.
Yeah.
Cool.
We're always here.
Yeah. I watched 30 minutes and fell asleep. Okay. Well, you're the best we got. Let's go.
Maybe it was before the internet. This whole process was easier. Easier because information flowed so much slower.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
And I feel like the only fix now is to like just
live on the internet.
Ask AI for like, give me a recap of Severance of the entire show.
Yeah.
Because. And that's why I keep going back to like the teams of writers, because like you said, Dustin, like having a team who's there writing this week, we're writing the sketches for this week, and it's based on what the second team has already done, which is spend the previous week with the upcoming host, pitching ideas and getting stuff, and then passing it to the next, or not even passing it to the next team, just becoming the this week team and then polishing all that. So, and then the third team is just sleeping and seeing their families and watching TV and thinking of stuff and just taking a fucking break. And then they come back and it's like, oh, guess what I did last week? I watched Severance, I've got a ton of ideas, and I've had tremendous sleep and my kids are happy. Everyone's good. I feel like I can come to work, and it's just
be funny.
I don't know.
Comedy flows from hate. Are you going to be more funny with more sleep or less funny?
And that's the thing. It's just like I feel like in that way, this show is still stuck in that 70s mindset of like, oh, just there's just the alchemy of. That's the only thing about the film that I didn't as much connect to is just like the like optimistic like power of art coming together. It's like, but that happening reinforces
art and cocaine,
horrible working conditions for human beings who are expected to create. And we've come just such a long way, not as long as we need to, but like we've come a long way in how to have an equitable and like fair and decent workplace, especially in an industry like that, where there's just not a lot of rules, and not a lot of structure. And it's just, that's the only problem I have with the film is like, it sort of implicitly celebrates that. And I have a problem with that because I keep thinking about how like I didn't want to enter the film industry when I graduated college because all I could think about was, oh, it sounds like a horrible way to actually live, and if you want to have any kind of life outside of it. I just keep thinking about that. But as far as a new executive producer,
win in the news.
I know. Yes.
Things don't happen every day in the news, right?
24-hour news cycle. What's that?
Thankfully, I didn't have to do any of that, but as far as executive producers and writers and everything else, like I don't know what the solution is, but this film got me thinking about it. The documentary got me thinking about it. And it's all cool. Yeah. It's just like I can't help but sort of feel like, okay, but I mean, I think it's slowly started to hurt the enthusiasm. I mean, anyone who gets hired to be on SNL is not going to say no because of the schedule. They're gonna be like, well, fucking SNL. Yeah. But the more that like Gen Z grows up and even Gen Alpha, I've noticed that these two generations just do not give a fuck about legacy anything. And so you may eventually have writers who are like, oh, I don't know, man, that sounds hard. And just, I keep thinking like the people you're hiring may be the best of the best, but you're putting them under conditions that will not allow them to produce their best work, in my opinion.
I actually feel like there used to be more competition for SNL. Like, it is an institution that's just being propped up. Like, a broadcast live thing is not a product of this type of like entertainment market. It is really the equivalent of like a old building that's being kept alive just because of the importance of its history or something. But it's also got no competition. And I was thinking like maybe we're in an era where like this is the last thing of this ilk that can survive, because I was just talking about UCB, Second City, there's all these like institutions that still exist, but even then, like, there's a huge democratization of comedy that happened via social media and stuff like that. So what I think is different now is that this is the big one and kind of the only one now. Like, you don't have your Kids in the Halls, your Mad TV,
in living color,
and all that other kind of stuff anymore. So it's either like you get big on TikTok, which there are enough people not on TikTok that's still not really like the big one kind of thing. So I honestly think it'll survive as long as they want to throw money and time at it to stay alive, because otherwise, like, where are people coming from? Like, social media is only as big as people having a rectangle in their pocket.
Right.
Like, the amount of things that need to be said to me about where, it's big on TikTok or something right now, and I'm 35. Like, I am the market that they're marketing to. We are now becoming the age that like the most things want to like appeal to us. And I don't know. I still see things because a comedian came from SNL more than I do like hearing about something on some social media app or something. So like,
I agree.
I feel like it's gobbled up everything that it could, and all it has left is that market share as far as being a curator of comedic talent, and as far as like the finger of the pulse of the entertainment scene.
It's also interesting that this format has there is a modern version of it, and it never seems to last long, which is the sketch comedy that like Key and Peele would do, or the Chappelle Show. It's like pre-recorded segments that are still sketch comedy, but it's not in front of a live audience. It doesn't have that breakneck pace that Saturday Night Live has. And those shows either die or the performers themselves kill them.
They run their course, and usually it's because those are the product of one. Like, the reason why they're successful is the same reason why they're flash in the pan, which is it is usually because it's one voice. Like, I Think You Should Leave. I don't think that should exist for 50 years. I don't think Tim Robinson would want it to exist for that long.
I think it should leave.
SNL only survives because it is constantly cycling.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
And so I don't know. I think it's important in that way. Because like I said, I Think You Should Leave, but it only exists because Tim Robinson failed at his tenure on SNL. Like, he started as a performer for one season. They said, this isn't working, you can move to the writing team. And he was there for 2 years, and then he left.
One of the episodes in that docuseries is all about that 11th season that like Robert Downey Jr. was on, and Anthony Michael Hall and everything, and how I didn't know much about that, but like at the end of that season, they have they said it was the only season of SNL to end on a cliffhanger, because they had all the cast. They had like whoever the host was, like they're in like a locker room at the end, and all the cast is in there, and they're like, "Oh, great job! Like, you killed it tonight! Like, that's a great show. Best way to end the season. I'm so happy we're coming back next season." I think Robert Downey Jr. says, or something, and then they cut to the outside, and someone locks the door, and it's like I think it's the host. It's some host or some other player that I don't know, but like someone with a grievance, and he's pouring gasoline all over the door. And Lorne walks up and he's like, "What the hell are you doing?" And he's like, "I'm going to burn him. Like, I'm going to burn it down." And he's like, "Hold on a second." And he goes in there. He comes back out with John Lovitz, because he saves him. And he's like, just run, John, just run. Yeah. And like he saves John Lovitz. And so they burn it. And so then they cut to inside the room and they're all like banging on the door, like, hey, there's a fire. And then the credits start rolling. And so when it's saying like, executive starring Robert Downey, and there's just a question mark next to all the cast members' names. And it ends with who will survive. And the only cast member who came back for the next season was John Lovitz. And the rest of them didn't come back because it was such a hated season.
Yeah.
And that's because and just to public, and then like in season, they opened that season with Madonna was the first host, and so then she was the first host for season 12, and they had her. She's sitting in like an armchair, and she's like, "NBC would like me to read you this letter," and then she basically wrote like, "The whole last season was a dream. It didn't happen," or whatever. And like people are like cheering and stuff. So like they publicly acknowledged that like the show just wasn't working that season for what all the reasons anyway, it's worth seeing, I suppose, but I didn't know any of that.
I like the humility in Meta. It's like when that Domino's had that campaign where like, we know our pizza sucks ass. We fixed
awful.
it.
Yeah. Yes.
It also reminds me, I don't know if you guys are Community people, like Community, the show.
The first 3 seasons or so. Yeah.
Okay. So the 4th season is the one where NBC fired Dan Harmon.
Yeah.
And like the writing crew, I think most of them left or something like that. And so the gap was filled for like one season before he came back for the 5th. And all the characters refer to that season. Like if somebody makes a story reference to that season, they call it the gas leak year. they're like, oh yeah, we can't really remember much of what happened last year because of the gas leak. And like, so
that's funny.
Anyway, I didn't know that had precedent before as far as SNL.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
like
funny. That's funny.
If you were to, you could talk to Robert Downey Jr. about it and he would basically agree that like, I mean, we were killed off, like we're the only ones who just didn't mysteriously leave the show or not renew a contract. Like, oh, we were all murdered,
But they also acted out a scene that I don't know, that
depicted their own,
like
that takes a lot of
which is weird,
commitment to do that.
Kind of cruel,
right?
Like, hey, I don't know if you could see one season of being on the largest broadcast comedy show ever as a failure. That's why I don't think people really fail on it. Like, there's people who pursue a career afterwards with merit, and then those who don't, or and it's their prerogative.
All right. Well, yeah, I just wanted to chit chat with you guys about that, but I'm tired. Yeah. Milton Berle. Yeah. Okay. Speaking of Muppets and that. Wieners. Okie dokie. All right. Goodbye. Good night, everybody.
I called a wiener a dongle a couple of nights ago in front of my girlfriend. And she was like, what? LBJ called his jumbo